Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I'm down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom. I'm prepping for a blacksmith class that actually starts tomorrow morning. So we're moving anvils and forges and things like that around down here, getting tools set up for that class. But in the meantime, I wanted to get this Wednesday video out for you guys on this weekend special. And I want this to be kind of an educational video. However, it's pouring down rain today as well. So we're going to do this under the overhang as best we can. Now, what we're going to talk about one of my favorite pieces of kit, and that is the Shemagh and some of the uses for a Shemagh. And I'm going to give you some ideas for uses of this Shemagh, about 20 or 25 of them, that you may not be aware of some of them. You may be aware of all of them, but it's a good refresher anyway. And we're going to divide it into survival priorities to show you where the Shemagh falls in there, because it is part of the 10 C's, that cotton material. And a Shemagh is generally made out of a natural material. You can get them in lots and lots of different colors, and you can also get sniper veils, which are more of a net Shemagh, and they have separate uses, even more than a Shemagh sometimes, depending on what you're doing. Now, the reason for this video is because this weekend's special is going to be Shemaghs. We got a really good deal from our supplier overseas on Shemaghs, and we have about 2,000 of them. They are multiple colors, multiple designs. Some of them are sniper veil type, and some of them are general Shemagh type. What we're going to do is we're going to put them on our site this weekend for $5.99. $5.99 for a full-size Shemagh or a full-size sniper veil. There'll be multiple colors and patterns for you to choose from on the site. And starting Friday at 1 p.m., as long as they last, and I can't guarantee you how long that's going to be, because the tent poles that we put up that we had a good amount of last week were gone inside of 40 minutes. So these Shemaghs may not last long at that $5.99 price, but again, we have quite a few of them. We have like 2,000. So they should last at least throughout the day on Friday if you don't get home from work to get your order in until, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about the uses for the Shemagh, why I think it's such an important piece of kit, some of the multifunctionality of it within your kit to address survival priorities. So stay with me, guys. Okay, so first, let's review real quick our survival priorities, because this list is a little bit different than a lot you may see on the internet. In my mind, the number one priority is self-aid. A lot of times I'll tell basic students that if you break survival down to its simplest form or its most rudimentary thought process, it is don't bleed out, don't get too hot, don't get too cold. It's pretty much that simple. So self-aid has to be your number one priority, because that's the biggest problem you can face. So we'll take care of that first. Then we'll worry about shelter. And the reason shelter is next is because the clothing on our back is part of our shelter. So we should address that secondary only to self-aid to make sure that our clothing is proper. And if we need to be protected from the elements, we get that taken care of. Then fire, then water or hydration, and then signaling for rescue or navigation, depending again on the scenario on whether you're going to navigate for self-rescue or signal for rescue for someone to come and get you. So we're going to use these 5 survival priorities to look at the Shemagh and the multifunctionality of it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at with this is self-aid, obviously. And these lists are not all-inclusive, but what they are is the best uses for these Shemaghs, or the most obvious uses for these Shemaghs under this survival priority. So I've got 5 listed here. The first one is improvised tourniquet. Obviously, everyone's seen that, taking this thing and making it into a triangle, tying a knot in it, sticking a stick in there and turning it like a windlass until it cuts off the blood flow. So a pressure dressing would be number 2. An easy way to make a pressure dressing with the Shemagh is to tie a knot in the middle of that and then take the tails and pull that knot down over the top of something to put pressure on that wound. Bandaging of any kind. We can rip this into strips. We can do whatever we need to do to make this bandaging material. Binding. If we're putting on a splint of some kind, obviously this gives us something that we can bind or tie. We can just roll this thing up, tie it in a knot, crank it down, and we can bind a splint to a leg, an arm, or something like that. And then obviously we can use this whole thing as a sling. Now we can just tie a knot in the top, put it over our head, and we can use it for a sling for an arm or something like that. So that gives us 5 easy things that we can use this for that relate directly to self-aid. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is shelter. Again, this Shemagh will do lots for us when it comes to our personal sheltering, our personal clothing. We can create a microclimate of shade with this in the summertime just by draping it over the top of us to create shade. That will keep the sun from beating down on our heads and will keep us cool. If we need to, we can use this for evaporative cooling by taking this and soaking it in water in the creek. And because it is cotton, on a hot day, the water is going to evaporate from this, causing it to be cool. So we can use this thing around our head, around our neck, even over our head when it's wet. And we can take advantage of that evaporative cooling to create a better microclimate. We can use this for a dust mask if we need to, so that we can keep dirt, debris, or smoke out of our face. We can also use this for a scarf inside of our outerwear. Tuck this thing over, put our outerwear over the top. We can even open these up if we want to give ourselves a little better protection. And then it will help protect our body core temperature a little bit as well. But this right here will keep the heat from escaping up like any other scarf. So it's good for that. And then, of course, we can use this for a belt around the outside of our waist if we're trying to trap our body's core temperature and we've got some kind of outerwear on that wind or convection is coming up through. We can use this to tie around that to trap that body heat. So we can use this for a belt as well, or even for an outside belt that we would put gear on, like a knife or something like that, if we needed to. Okay, when it comes to fire, a couple simple things. Obviously, we can use this material to char. Because it is a natural material, it will make good char if we can't find something off the landscape. We can also use this, I'll jump down real quick to the bottom, we can also use this as a tinder source because it's a natural material, it will burn. So in an emergency, we could use this for a tinder source if we had to, in lieu of something that we might be able to find off the landscape if it's an emergency. And then obviously we can use this for a torch by just wrapping this and binding this around a stick, just like this, soaking it in something that will burn, pine sap, anything like that. And we can use this for a torch on the end of a stick if we need to. So those are just some simple things that we can use this for around a fire. Okay, as far as water goes, we can use this Shemagh as a pre-filter, obviously, to filter debris and turbidity out of our water. We can use it as a wicking tool or a sop, which means we could sop water up out of a puddle with it and wring it out into a container or wring it out into our mouth. We could tie this thing around our boots, around our ankles, and walk through wet ground, collect the water on that, wring it out and drink it if we needed to. We can also use this thing to wick water from one to another. So if we've got a hollow stump that's full of water, we can use part of the Shemagh to wick down into a container to soak that water up and bring it down into a container through gravity. You could also use that same wicking concept if you're trying to make some kind of a torch, going back to fire, or some type of oil lamp. You could use this for a wick as well. So the last thing that you can use this for, or that's on this list that you can use it for. So the last thing we've got on this list is a winter water generator. Basically suspending this in a tripod or suspending this in some type of bindle fashion where we bring the corners together, we fill it with ice or snow, and we hang it near the fire so that as the water melts, it drips into a container. So that is a winter water generator. So those are 3 simple things that we can use this for to help us with our water priority. Okay, signaling and navigation. This is where the orange Shemagh comes in really well. And I'm using this one to erase the board with, so it's kind of dusty. But an orange Shemagh is always a good thing to have in your kit if you're going, especially if you're going to have 2. One orange one's always great. If you want one that's more of an earth tone color, that's fine. But an orange one's always good to have. So you've got a signal flag or flags that you can use for active signaling. You have a panel that you can fold into the shape of an arrow or a point that will point the direction of travel from something like a vehicle that you abandon. And you have a waypoint marker that you can use in the woods for navigation to have a last known point of origin, or even a marker in strips of the trail you actually walked. If you walk away from something that is stationary, that's easily identifiable because you need to walk for resources or walk to find a better place to camp, you can take strips of this orange, tie them at eye level on bushes and trees along the way so that you're easily found by someone else and easily trailed to your camp. So there are lots of things that you can use this for signaling and nav as well, and that orange is really the key to that. Okay, let's talk about some miscellaneous things that we might not have covered already that we can use this Shemagh for. Hygiene, obviously, we can use it for a wash rag, we can use it for a towel. A bindle. A bindle is nothing more than a bag that we make out of this by bringing the corners up, just like we would if we were making a generator for water in the wintertime, and putting equipment inside and then tying this at the top. Typical hobo fashion stuff. Waypoint Survival's got lots of videos on this type of stuff and the bindle, carrying it on a stick with your gear inside. But you could also tuck this thing up underneath your belt. You could also roll gear up inside this and use it as a butt pack. You could use it for a camp rag of sorts, where you taking stuff off the fire, wiping down a cutting board, anything like that, using it as a wash rag or a dish towel. Goes back to hygiene, but for camping, right? Repair thread. All of these Shemaghs, you can pull threads out of these Shemaghs to use them for repair if you have to sew a button back on, if you have to darn a sock in the woods, something like that. Most of these Shemaghs have threads in them that you can actually pull out if you need to. There's one right there. I just pulled that one out. There's a really long piece of thread right there that I just pulled out of that Shemagh. That's plenty enough right there to sew on a button or darn a sock, right? And when I pulled it back, it just went right back in there. But I can cut that thing off and use that thread for repair. Hunting concealment. Obviously, anything that is earth tone colors that's broken up like a Shemagh, if we match it to the environment, we can use that for some type of concealment to break up our outline while we're hunting. Now, real quick, the last thing I want to talk about are these mesh, what they call a sniper's veil, okay? And they are basically a mesh or net of fabric. So they have most of the advantages of the other Shemaghs with some added additional advantages because they can be used for gathering food as hunting or trapping. So just to give you a few ideas, obviously we can use this for concealment purposes to hunt with, just like we would a Shemagh, and that will work fine. And we can actually see through this if we put it over our face. But because it is a net or a mesh, we can also just tie sticks down the ends of this thing down both sides, and we can use this for a seining type net for crayfish and small fish if we're looking for bait. We can also thread bank line through this and around it to make it like a net purse that we could use as a net trap if we wanted to as well. So there are extra advantages to this. We can make a dip net out of this very easily by making a hoop stick and lacing it around a stick, lacing it down the side and closing the end. We can make a dip net for dipping things like fish, crayfish. So there are lots of advantages to this mesh net. And for me, you know, the best of both worlds is to have one of each. But we also have several of these that we're going to be selling in the same special for $5.99. Okay, just to close this up and reiterate this, we have probably 15 or 20 different models or different colors, different color schemes of these Shemaghs and sniper veils. Friday at 1 p.m., they will go on sale for $5.99. Your choice of which one you want for $5.99. That's probably less than half price of where you can buy them anywhere else. And some of them are going to have skull and crossbones on them. Some of them are going to have AR-15s on them. Some of them are going to have grenades on them. Some of them are going to be multicolored. Some of them are going to be plain colors. Some of them will be woodland colors. Some of them will be more loud colors. We have veils in a camouflage. We have them in black. We have them in tan. So there's lots of these things available to you to choose from. And if you're looking for something for your kids, for your wife, for yourself, you're definitely going to find it in this pile that we have for sure. So I wanted to make sure this video was somewhat educational at the same time being, hey, we're going to put these on sale, because I promised you guys a Wednesday video leading up to a sale on Friday every week. So with that said, I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business. Follow our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. I'm going to get ready for this blacksmithing class tomorrow, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks.